Don't touch me, Jimin. The words cut through the rehearsal room more sharply than the music that had stopped only seconds before. Jimin froze. The last beat of the song still seemed to vibrate inside the walls, a low electronic pulse lingering beneath the silence. Sweat cooled against his neck. The air smelled of dust, fabric softener, and the faint metallic heat of equipment that had been running for hours. Across the room, Jungkook stood with both hands clenched at his sides. His chest rose and fell heavily. Jimin had seen Jungkook angry before. This was different. This anger was quiet. That frightened him more than shouting ever could. Jungkook. Don't. Jungkook lifted one hand. The gesture was small, but it stopped Jimin instantly. For several seconds, neither moved. The mirrored wall reflected them as strangers. Jimin pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Jungkook rigid and trembling with an emotion he was desperately trying to control. You think everything is a joke, Jungkook said. His voice was low. Jimin swallowed. I didn't mean. That's exactly the problem. You never mean anything. You say something cruel, you laugh, and then you expect everyone else to laugh with you. Jimin's eyes dropped. He knew exactly what had happened. An hour earlier, during rehearsal, Jungkook had made a mistake in the choreography. It had been tiny, almost invisible, but Jimin had noticed. Instead of quietly helping him, Jimin had made a joke. A joke about Jungkook always needing someone to save him. Everyone had laughed. At least, Jimin had thought they had. But Jungkook hadn't. And then Jimin had made the mistake worse. He had mentioned something Jungkook had once told him privately. Something about his fear of disappointing the people he cared about. Jimin had said it in front of everyone. He had watched Jungkook's smile disappear. Yet Jimin had still laughed. Now, standing beneath the harsh lights, he finally understood what that moment had cost. I am sorry, Jimin whispered. Jungkook looked at him. No, I'm sorry because I hurt you. Do you even know why it hurt? Jimin hesitated. Jungkook's eyes became glassy. That was something I trusted you with. The words landed harder than any accusation. Jimin opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Jungkook looked away. I trusted you more than anyone. His voice cracked. And you used it to make everyone laugh. Jimin felt something inside his chest collapse. He wanted to move closer. He wanted to explain. He wanted to rewind the night. But none of those things were possible. So he remained where he was. I was trying to make everyone comfortable, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook stared at him. You made yourself comfortable. That sentence followed Jimin long after Jungkook walked away. The door closed. Not slammed. Not dramatically. Just closed. Somehow that was worse. Jimin remained alone in the rehearsal room. The lights above him buzzed. He looked at his reflection. For the first time that night, he didn't recognize the person staring back. He had always believed that being close to someone meant knowing how to make them laugh. He had forgotten that being close to someone also meant knowing what not to laugh about. Jimin slowly sat on the floor. His phone vibrated. A message appeared from Jungkook. I need some space. Please don't follow me. Jimin stared at the screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He typed 3 words. I'm really sorry. He deleted them. He typed again. Can we talk? Finally, he locked the screen. For once, he decided not to make his own feelings the center of the situation. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows. Jimin sat beneath the fading lights, listening to it. He did not know that the argument had only opened a wound neither of them had realized was there. And he did not know that Jungkook, walking alone through the rain, was carrying a secret of his own. Episode 2. Jungkook hated silence. People often assumed he enjoyed being alone because he rarely complained about it. They were wrong. He liked quiet places. Silence was different. Silence gave his thoughts too much room. He drove without turning on the radio. Rain slid across the windshield in silver lines, breaking apart whenever the wipers moved. His hands remained steady on the steering wheel. His mind did not. He replayed the rehearsal again. Jimin laughing. Everyone turning toward him. Those words. The thing Jungkook had told Jimin late one night when neither of them could sleep. He had admitted that sometimes he was terrified of failing. Not professionally. Personally. He feared becoming someone people eventually stopped needing. It was an irrational fear. He knew that. But fears didn't disappear simply because they were irrational. Jimin had been the only person who knew. Until tonight. Jungkook stopped at a red light. His phone vibrated. He didn't look. The light turned green. He drove. At home, he left his shoes beside the door and stood in the dark. The apartment was silent. He switched on a small lamp instead of the ceiling lights. Warm light spread across the room. On the shelf was a photograph. Jimin was in it. They were both laughing. Jungkook stared at the picture for a long time. Then he turned it face down. He hated himself for doing it. He hated Jimin for making him do it. And most of all, he hated that, even after everything, some part of him still wanted to call. Meanwhile, Jimin sat on the edge of his bed. His phone remained untouched beside him. He had developed a strange habit when he was nervous. He counted. 3 breaths. 5 breaths. 10. Then he would start again. Tonight, the counting didn't work. He walked to the kitchen. Opened the refrigerator. Closed it. Opened it again. There was no reason. He wasn't hungry. He was avoiding thinking. Finally, he returned to the living room and found an old notebook. Inside were pages filled with random thoughts, song ideas, unfinished sentences. He turned to a blank page. At the time, what did I actually do? For several minutes, he stared at the question. Then he began writing. He wrote about the joke, the laughter, Jungkook's expression. The moment he realized the smile had disappeared. He wrote until his hand hurt. Then he stopped. One sentence remained unfinished. I was afraid that if I wasn't the person who made everyone laugh, then Jimin couldn't finish it. That was his secret. He had spent years hiding behind humor. If he made people laugh, they didn't notice when he was scared. If he teased someone first, nobody could tease him. If he turned serious moments into jokes, he didn't have to face how deeply they affected him. But Jungkook had always seen through it. That was why losing Jungkook's trust terrified him. Because Jungkook knew him. The real him. The version behind the smile. The next morning, they met again. The room felt smaller. Jimin arrived later. Their eyes met for less than a second. Jimin immediately looked away. No one mentioned the argument. They rehearsed. Professional. Precise. Cold. At one point, Jimin missed a cue. Jungkook noticed. He didn't correct him. Another mistake followed. Still nothing. The silence between them became its own presence. During a break, Jimin approached. Jungkook. Jungkook turned. I said I needed space. I know. Then why are you here? Because we're still working together. That isn't what I meant. Jimin nodded. I know. Jungkook's expression softened for half a second, then disappeared again. I don't know. I understand. No, you don't. Jungkook walked away. Jimin watched him go. He wanted to run after him. He didn't. That afternoon, Jimin found something inside his bag. A small folded piece of paper. He didn't recognize the handwriting at first. Then he did. Jungkook's. Jimin unfolded it. Only one sentence had been written. You weren't the first person to hurt me. You were just the person I never expected to. Jimin closed his eyes. For the first time, he understood that this was bigger than one joke. There were older wounds beneath it. And if he wanted to repair what he had broken, apologizing wouldn't be enough. He would have to listen. Even if the truth hurt. 3 days passed. Neither of them spoke outside rehearsals. Jimin stopped making jokes around Jungkook. Jungkook stopped looking at him. Their friends noticed. Nobody asked. Sometimes people could sense that a wound was too fresh to touch. Then, during an evening rehearsal, the power suddenly went out. The room plunged into darkness. Someone cursed. A few emergency lights flickered on. Jimin heard movement. Then a loud crash. Jungkook. No answer. He moved toward the sound. A chair had fallen. Jungkook was standing beside it, one hand pressed against his wrist. Are you okay? I'm Fina. You're bleeding. It's nothing. Jimin took a step forward. Jungkook immediately stepped back. The movement hurt more than Jimin expected. I can get the first aid kit. I can do it myself. Jimin stopped. Okay. Jungkook looked at him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Jungkook sighed. Why are you always trying to fix everything? Jimin lowered his eyes. Because I don't know what else to do. That isn't always helpful. I know. Jungkook looked surprised. Jimin continued. I used to think if someone was upset, I had to make them laugh. If someone was angry, I had to make them smile. If something was uncomfortable, I had to make it disappear. He gave a small, bitter smile. But sometimes people don't need to laugh. Jungkook said nothing. They need someone to stay. The room was quiet. Jungkook looked at the floor. I needed you to stay that night. Jimin's breath caught. I know. No. Jungkook's voice trembled. You don't. He looked up. I wasn't angry because of the joke. Jimin stared at him. I was angry because you knew exactly what I was afraid of. His voice became quieter. And you made it public. Jimin nodded slowly. I was wrong. Yes. I was selfish. Yes. I was trying to protect myself. Jungkook frowned. From what? Jimin hesitated. Then finally answered. For being seen. Jungkook's expression changed. Jimin continued. I hate serious conversations because they make me feel exposed. So I joke. I tease. I pretend nothing matters. He swallowed. But I know it matters. Jungkook stared at him. You could have told me. I was afraid. Of me? Of you knowing how much I care. The words escaped before Jimin could stop them. Silence followed. Jungkook looked away. Jimin's eyes lifted. Jungkook gave a faint smile. For the first time in days, Jimin almost laughed. Almost. Then he remembered the wound. I don't expect you to forgive me tonight. Good. I just want you to know that I'm willing to earn your trust again. Jungkook nodded. Then start by not trying to control how I feel. Jimin nodded. I will. The lights suddenly returned. Everyone blinked against the brightness. The moment disappeared. But something had changed. Not enough to repair everything. Enough to begin. Later that night, Jungkook found Jimin outside. He was sitting on the steps, looking at the city lights. You haven't gone home? Jimin shook his head. Not yet. Jungkook sat beside him. They remained silent. It felt honest. After a while, Jungkook said, I have something I never told you. Jimin looked at him. What? Jungkook hesitated. I've been afraid too. Of what? Jungkook looked toward the distant lights. That one day, I'll trust someone completely, and they'll use that trust against me. Jimin's chest tightened. And that's why what happened hurts so much. Jimin nodded. I understand. Jungkook looked at him. Do you? Yes. Then don't promise me you'll never hurt me. Jimin frowned. Why? Because you can't promise that. Jungkook looked down at his hands. Promise me something else. What? That if you hurt me, you'll be honest enough to admit it. Jimin's eyes became wet. I promise. Jungkook nodded. Neither noticed the figure standing across the street. Someone had been watching them. And someone had heard every word. Episode 4. The next morning, everything changed. A photograph appeared online. It showed Jimin and Jungkook sitting together outside the building. The picture itself was harmless. The caption was not. It suggested that the two had been hiding a serious conflict. Within hours, rumors spread. Jimin stared at the screen. His stomach tightened. Jungkook entered the room. Did you see it? Yeah, Jungkook took his phone from his pocket. Who took this? I don't know. Jimin looked at the photograph again. Something bothered him. Not the image. The angle. The photographer had been standing in a location that wasn't visible from the main street. Someone had deliberately positioned themselves nearby. This wasn't random, Jimin said. Jungkook looked at him. What do you mean? They knew where we would be. A cold silence settled between them. For the first time since their argument, they stood on the same side of a problem. Jungkook zoomed in. There's someone in the reflection. Jimin leaned closer. A dark figure stood behind a glass door. Face obscured. Who is that? They couldn't identify the person. But the photograph wasn't the only thing. Later that day, another message arrived. You should be careful who you trust. Jimin showed it to Jungkook. Jungkook stared at the screen. Delete it. Why? Because that's what they want. Jimin frowned. You think someone is trying to provoke us? I think someone knows we're vulnerable. That evening, Jimin received another message. This time, there was an attachment. A photograph. It showed Jungkook alone, taken several months earlier. Jimin's face went pale. There was no reason for a stranger to have it. Underneath was a sentence. You already crossed the line once. Don't cross it again. Jimin immediately called Jungkook. No answer. He called again. Nothing. Fear replaced confusion. He grabbed his jacket. He knew where Jungkook had gone. The riverside. Jungkook often went there when he needed to think. Jimin arrived breathless. Jungkook stood near the railing, staring at the dark water. Jungkook. Jungkook turned. What happened? Jimin showed him the message. Where did you get this? I don't know. Who else has this number? I don't know. Jungkook took a breath. Then he noticed something behind Jimin. Don't move. Jimin froze. A car had stopped across the street. Its headlights were off. Someone sat inside. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's arm and pulled him behind a concrete pillar. The car remained still. Seconds passed. Then the vehicle drove away. Neither spoke. Jimin's heart hammered. Jungkook released his arm. Are you okay? Jimin nodded. Then whispered, This is because of me. No, I caused the first problem. You didn't cause this. What if I hadn't? Stop. Jungkook looked directly into his eyes. Don't turn everything into your fault. Jimin's eyes filled with tears. I don't want anything to happen to you. Then trust me. Eat dough. Jungkook shook his head. No, you trust yourself to protect me. Jimin went silent. Jungkook continued. That's different. The words struck deeply. Jimin finally understood. Love, friendship, loyalty, whatever name they gave the bond between them, wasn't about controlling the outcome. Sometimes it was about standing beside someone while admitting you were afraid. That night, they decided to investigate together. Not because they wanted revenge, because they wanted the truth. And because, somewhere along the way, their conflict had revealed something more important. They had both been carrying fear alone. Now, they were finally carrying it together. Episode 5. The truth arrived slowly. A deleted message. An old photograph. A forgotten conversation. A name. Someone from their past had been watching them for months. Not because of jealousy. Not because of personal hatred. Because they wanted leverage. The rumors had been deliberately created. The photograph had been strategically captured. And Jimin's mistake had been the perfect opportunity. He had given them the emotional fracture they needed. When Jimin discovered this, guilt returned. I made it easy for them, he said. Jungkook shook his head. You made a mistake. That's the same thing. No. Jungkook looked at him. A mistake is something you did. It isn't everything you are. Jimin stared at him. The sentence stayed with him. When he was afraid someone might leave, he acted as though he didn't care. Now, he was finally confronting the pattern. I don't want to be like this anymore, he whispered. Jungkook nodded. Then change. I will. You don't have to do it overnight. Jimin smiled faintly. You sound like someone much older than me. Jungkook laughed. It was the first genuine laugh between them in days. Jimin smiled too. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then Jungkook's phone rang. His expression changed. He answered. A voice spoke from the other end. Jungkook said nothing. His face became pale. Where? He listened. They found the person who sent the messages. Jimin stood. Who? Jungkook hesitated, then gave him a name. Jimin's expression froze. He knew that person. Someone who had once been close to them. Someone they had trusted. The betrayal felt almost worse than the original conflict. They met the person in a quiet room later that evening. There were no dramatic threats. No shouting. Only uncomfortable truth. The messages had been designed to manipulate them. The rumors had been designed to make them distrust each other. And the photograph had been released at precisely the moment their relationship was weakest. Jimin listened without interrupting. When it was over, he asked one question. Why? The answer was simple. Because people who trust each other are difficult to control. Jimin looked at Jungkook. Jungkook looked back. Neither spoke. They understood. Their greatest vulnerability had also become their greatest strength. They had almost allowed someone else to define what their relationship meant. But they had chosen to talk, to listen, to admit mistakes, to stay. After everything was resolved, Jimin and Jungkook returned to the empty rehearsal room. The same room where everything had begun. Jimin stood in front of the mirror. I hate this place. Jungkook smiled. Me too. Jimin laughed softly, then became serious. Jungkook. I know saying sorry doesn't erase what I did. I know. And I know trusting me again will take time. It will. Jimin nodded. I'll wait. Jungkook looked at him. You don't have to wait. Jimin frowned. You have to live. Jungkook walked closer. Keep being yourself. Just don't hide behind jokes when something matters. Jimin smiled. I'll try. That's enough. For the first time, Jimin believed him. Weeks later, the rehearsal room was filled with music again. The same mirrors. The same lights. The same wooden floor. But the atmosphere had changed. Jimin missed a step. Jungkook noticed. Jimin stopped immediately. Don't say it. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. You know what I'm going to say? Yes. You're terrible. Jimin gasped dramatically. See? This is why I don't trust you. Jungkook laughed. Jimin laughed too. The sound filled the room. Then they continued rehearsing. No resentment. No hidden anger. No pretending. Their relationship hadn't returned to what it had been before. It had become something different. Something stronger. Because trust rebuilt after being broken was never exactly the same. It was more deliberate, more conscious, more fragile, and perhaps more valuable. After rehearsal, they sat outside beneath the evening sky. Jimin carried 2 drinks. He handed one to Jungkook. You remembered. Jungkook looked at the cup. Of course. Jimin smiled. For a while, they watched the city. Then Jimin spoke. I've been thinking about that night. Jungkook sighed. I know. Jimin looked down. I still regret it. You should. Jimin looked up, startled. Jungkook smiled. Not because you should punish yourself. Because remembering it means you'll know not to repeat it. Jimin nodded. You're right. Jungkook leaned back. You know what I learned? What? That being angry doesn't mean I stopped caring. Jimin looked at him. And being hurt doesn't mean everything has to end. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything they had survived. Jimin's eyes became wet. Thank you. Jungkook looked at him. For what? For staying. Jungkook smiled. You stayed too. The evening breeze moved through the trees. Somewhere nearby, traffic hummed. The city continued as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But for them, everything had changed. Jimin had learned that humor could become cruelty when used carelessly. Jungkook had learned that anger could protect a wound, but could not heal it. And both had learned that trust wasn't something given once. It was something rebuilt every day. Jimin stood. Come on. Where? Food. Jungkook laughed. You're always hungry. That's not true. It absolutely is. Jimin started walking. Jungkook followed. After a few steps, Jimin stopped. He looked back. You coming? Jungkook nodded. Yeah. They continued side by side. No dramatic promises. No perfect ending. Just two people who had hurt each other, faced the truth, and chosen not to run away from it. The memory of that terrible night would remain, not as a scar that defined them, but as a reminder. Sometimes the person closest to you can hurt you most deeply. And sometimes, if both people are willing to listen, the same relationship can become the place where healing begins. Jimin glanced at Jungkook. Jungkook glanced back. Neither needed to say anything. They understood. And for the first time, silence between them no longer meant distance. It meant peace.